evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And I'm your host, Badbaby, and I'm being accompanied tonight by my co-host, Robert Papino, and our guest tonight is Dave Dobbs, and I have spoke to him, and he said he's going to be here. He must be running late or having a problem dialing in, so we're just going to kind of hang out for a few minutes and chit-chat till he comes in. We can kind of explain to him how this works, and then we'll get on with our bumper song. But until then, Robert and I were in the middle of talking about how the sun looked yesterday, and we'll just continue with our conversation because I have been seeing the most strange things in the skies, and especially with the sun being huge and burnt orange, and it's just been crazy. So can you update us, Robert, with some things that you've been seeing down there in Arizona?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, we're definitely seeing some craziness. For one, just before I even get into the sun, okay, just so for anybody who doesn't live in Arizona, for those who are listening in now who understand the weather patterns in Arizona, you'll understand exactly what I'm going to say. For those of you who don't live here, then this is going to be another added, layer of the cake. What's happened is the weather is cooled extremely here in Arizona. Now, for those of you who don't know this, usually we have 100-degree temperature, 101, 105, all the way up until the end of October. The weather pattern has shifted drastically here, especially here in Phoenix, where I live. We've cooled down into the 90s. It's going into the low 60s now, and this has been for the last, I want to say, week, okay? A dramatic shift in the weather now.
I think we got him here. Excuse me.
Okay.
Hate to interrupt. I think Dave, I just checked on. Is this you, Dave?
Dave Dobbs here.
Oh, good. Okay, sweetie. We were just kind of like filling in until you got here.
Excellent. Am I on time?
You're a couple minutes late, about 5 minutes, but we'll chastise you later for that.
I'm so sorry about that. I wasn't putting 00 onto that. I'm phoning from France. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning here, so we're just trying to work out what the hell went wrong. But we're here. I'm with you, Badbaby.
Okay. Well, you know what, you guys? Why don't we forego the opening bumper song tonight, since he's calling from France? We don't want to lose him.
Thank you. I'm so
sorry.
It's
so good of you to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning for us, Dave. We love you for that.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. I've got to be honest with you, I haven't actually been to bed, actually. I've just been I've been looking at some material, various sort of stuff, trying to get ready for your show to to bring some things to the table and obviously try and get some creative kind of like energy going with you. It was lovely meeting you when I met you at Steve Olson's conference. So and we had a bit of a chat. We had a really good chat then, and I really felt like you were very kind of like I really felt like you took me under your arm a little bit there, and I was a little bit overwhelmed by the whole thing and meeting all the whole Planet X community there, all speaking, and you were very, very lovely there, and I really felt that what you offer as a person, and as you're a very warm person that enables a lot of people to have a voice, and so it's great to be on the show.
Well, thank you. That's so sweet of you to say that. I'm so glad that I met you also. I had a great time at the WSO Survival Conference, and meeting everybody was one of the highlights of my weekend, and I too felt very close to you. I mean, it was like everybody that we had met that was a guest speaker there. We were all like old friends. We really hit it off, didn't we, Dave?
It was such a powerful thing, because it's quite a big step for me to come out to America and do that. I really didn't have the money to do it, and a lovely chap called Tom, a Christian guy actually, and I often think I probably piss more Christians off with some of the stuff I say, but actually many times I find that I find Christians are kind of split into two fundamental camps. I find that the world is split into two fundamental camps, if not three. It's that between people who are either driven by faith or they're driven by belief, and the third camp is obviously the fence that is in between. And when we're driven by faith, and we have to go to the kind of like our feelings in our own heart and let those guide us. We take all this information in, but whether it be through the Bible or wherever it comes from, wherever we draw elements of truth and elements of guidance, and we either take those as absolute belief and we follow it like a machine, where we don't need to have any feeling over what we're doing, or we have to operate by faith, where we have to be guided by our feelings and our own inner heart. And I feel that you're very much one of these people that is guided by your inner feelings and your heart. And I think most people are, really, but there's obviously an enormous amount of people out there that are just guided by absolute cold belief, and that's a terrifying place to be. And I think this is one of the big problems that humanity's got to get past at the moment. And I think we're all working together with people that are kind of learning these lessons.
Okay, and I just want to let you know, Dave, that I have a co-host with me tonight, and his name is Robert. And Robert, I want to introduce you to Dave Dobbs, so that you know that when Robert jumps in and starts asking questions, you know who's talking to you.
Well, Dave, it's a pleasure to meet you. It's a pleasure to meet you. I've watched a lot of your videos. Some very interesting information you put out there. I think you've done some spectacular work on the Planet X system. I really have. Very, very telling, my friend.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been such a massive process. I've got to be honest with you. It's because when you're talking about something like this, you feel really quite isolated. When you hear about Veliskowski or David Icke or all these people, Veliskowski was the kind of like Emmanuel Veliskowski was the kind of David Icke of the 1950s. And
agreed.
And he was called he was referred to as the kind of the not the blasphemers, the what do you call it, the heretic's heretic.
Right. Yeah.
That even a heretic would call him a heretic. and I think that the Planet X community at large has had to deal with a massive amount of people pointing the finger of heresy, to such a massive degree. And until you start talking about something like this, until you start realizing that you have to represent a truth that you sometimes don't know that much about, but there's just too much data to ignore. And then you've got something like Fukushima, and if you're someone like myself who sees Fukushima as absolutely without any doubt whatsoever being caused by Planet X, and you realize that we've seen that the whole Planet X community is fundamentally now split into two camps, isn't it? Really, it's one side of it believes that Planet X is on its way in. It's sort of it's approaching, if you like, perihelion. It's approaching its closest point to the sun, and the other side of the community, like myself, is believing it's on its way out, and it's come into the sun, and its closest proximity to the sun was actually Fukushima, and now it's on its way out again. And so we had 2004, we had the massive earthquake in 2004 and tsunami.
Right, the Bandiachi earthquake. That was quite incredible. 250,000 people lost their lives because they didn't realize what was happening. Yeah, no, quite extraordinary what happened in 2004.
Yeah, absolutely, 250,000 people, and that's the official figure. That's the official figure. And so we can understand that, if we take something like 9/11 or any most disasters, you cannot call someone dead unless you have an official kind of like understanding that body is accounted for and dead. You have to wait 7 years to call someone dead after that period if you can't identify their body or anything else like that. And you can imagine most people in India don't have birth certificates, they're not listed as even existing.
Right.
And so when we're talking about 250,000 people dead, we aren't really touching the volume of people that potentially has died on that day. And so when we talk about 2004, and then so we're talking about December 2004, and if we start to understand the trajectory of the movements of Planet X, from my perspective, it's been heading towards the sun. It came in under the Earth December 2004. It's been taken the best part of 60, 70, 80 years from us actually seeing it. You know, as Steve Olson pointed out quite recently, it's quite likely that Hitler saw this in 1938, and it's quite likely that sort of like Carlos Ferrada saw this in the 1920s and 1930s. You know, this we've had almost 100-year history of observing this thing coming in. It's not new to us. And then obviously we've had this point of closest proximity to the sun, which I think is 2010, 2011, with the big 8.8 earthquake in Chile on the 27th of February 2010. And of course 8.8 is a massive earthquake. And then the Earth has gone round the sun. It's come to the 11th of February 2011, and it's gone another 12 days to the 11th of March 2011. Now, astronomically, that's a 12-day difference from our perspective. Astronomically, that's a 12-day difference in astronomical positioning. And then we have what was originally listed as a 9.6, which was the massive Fukushima disaster. And to me, that is that kind of closest point to the sun. That is the perihelion point of Planet X to our sun. And then then this thing has gone over the top of the sun. And of course, this is the piece that I've charted, you know, in my videos, where I've sort of said, "Oh my goodness, isn't it amazing? We've had Comet Elenin, Comet Ison, asteroid this, asteroid that." And then when we start laying down not what NASA is telling us, but the astronomical kind of like sightings by all the different people who've posted this up on YouTube, Facebook groups, and whatever else, we've suddenly realized that there's a 198-day to 200-day cycle, and we realize that this thing is a regular occurrence, and we're being lied to by these institutions that obviously don't want us to see this for whatever their reasons are. And
well, let me ask, Dave, let me interrupt you. I mean, with Paul Cox from SLU coming out and doing that little bit about, oh, well, there's the second sun. If you weren't, I'm not sure if you ever saw that video or were aware of it, but we had Paul Cox from SLU, who's, you know, an astronomer, who runs, I believe, SLU, if I'm not mistaken, who, you know, on the, on the passage of Mercury, we're seeing this other, you know, bright object right next to the sun. He's saying, oh, well, if you didn't realize, that's our second sun, and, you know, NASA, of course, would never tell you anything like that. What's your thoughts on that? And I think that was, going back about 3 years or so ago, wasn't it? 3 or 4 years ago. I'm trying to remember exactly.
I remember it. I do remember it, because it's very rare that sort of like that an astronomer comes out and points out Planet X, and when he does, he normally gets shot down.
Right.
There's been so many, but there hasn't been that many official kind of astronomers that come out and actually talk about it. And not many that, you know, there's, you know, you get the sort of like, you obviously got you know, back in the sort of like in the 60s and 70s, we had loads of films being made about it. In actual fact, Star Wars effectively was about Planet X and what have you, really. And you know, when it first came out in 1977, which was around about the time when Zecharia Sitchin was first writing about it, and it's one of those things that we've seen so many shots of, and it's one of those things that we just can't seem to believe. And even when we do the research, we struggle to believe it. You know, even the researchers, we kind of find ourselves, we all find ourselves so struggling to we're struggling with belief. It's always coming back to this belief. This is what this is all about. This is what this we are attached to this need to be able to believe something, and this is all the great. I was speaking to my mum the other day, and my mum's an incredible channel. She's an incredible channel. My father also, and my mother and father channeled for me when I was, they've been. My father was a channel. Well, my stepfather was. My parents got divorced when I was 6 or 7 years of age, and my mother remarried a guy called Peter, who died a few years ago actually. But he was a channel, and when I was younger, he used to tell me when he used to channel a being called White Cloud, and another being called John. And I used to sit in circles, and of course I didn't question anything like that back then, apart from the fact that my stepfather was a very strict man, and this being that he used to channel was an absolute. He was like an angel. He was like such a beautiful being. So he used to say had such a different type of dialogue to my stepfather, who was a very hard, strict man. Bless him. He was a lovely man, but he was just a different type of character. And
I can attest to that. I can attest to that, Dave, because I had the same kind of father, very strict, very but very serious man most of his life, until his later days. So I totally understand what you're saying.
And this being that his channel was just full of so much love and so much understanding and so much compassion, and turned everything into forgiveness. Talked about recycling every point that is around you. That don't try and change your perception. Don't try and so much change your perception of the world. Recycle it into something beautiful. Try and recycle everything into something better, and seeing and turning every experience into a benefit, even if it's a painful experience. Convert it into something which is of value to you, and see this.
Sometimes we have to go through the rough part in order to get to the calm part, don't you think, Dave?
Absolutely, Badbaby. It's just that point of recycling, turning around, and every guru, every master talks about. This is what my mum was saying to me the other day. She said every guru, every master talks about the ability to come to a point of disattachment. But unfortunately, disattachment can only be learnt through attachment.
That's true.
Yeah. All righty. Well, before you came in, we were talking about yesterday when I was coming home, I looked to the west, and the sun was huge, and it was so yellow-orange that the sky on both sides was just glowing yellow-orange. Now, since you're over on the other side of the planet from us, I want to know, are you seeing the same thing that I am seeing? What are you seeing over there?
I went out yesterday and today. It's been really, really cold here for the last couple of months. It's been really cold, which has been.
Is that abnormal, Dave? Is that abnormal?
It's really
for that
abnormal.
area?
It's really abnormal, and the reason it's been cold is because there's so much heat being generated by the sun at the moment. You get this peculiar effect where we get all this moisture coming up, and it creates all this cloud, and of course they're doing all this chemtrailing to hide everything. So that's also kind of creating all this cloud. So we've got a permanent we've had permanent cloud covering everywhere, and there's a lot of moisture in the air. And when you've got a lot of heat, ironically, it creates cloud. You get moisture and a dampness, and the heat doesn't get through. Ironically, it just goes through everything. You'd think it'd be hot, but now the temperature's just going down to what a normal summer would be. So suddenly it's clearing a little bit. So we're getting back to the kind of like the normal sort of hot days you get, except it's exceptionally hot. But yesterday I went down for sunset, and the sun was massive. Today I watched the sunset today, and the sun was massive, absolutely huge. And I was marveling at the same thing. And we don't know what is real and what is fake anyway. We don't know if that's for all we know. That could be Nemesis, and our own sun is being cloaked. We have
That's
no
what
clue
I
anymore.
thought. That's exactly what I thought. But the two of them are so close that it's like they're connecting together, and it's one huge sun. And that's what I saw. And it kind of looked like the sun was really close to our planet. That's how huge it was.
That's what I was thinking. I kid you not, hand on my heart, I was thinking exactly the same thing. And I hear Steve talking about this. I hear Jeff P. talking about this. I've got to say, these characters are some of my sort of favorite characters in the world at the moment because of their ability to talk about really controversial things and just keep doing it, keep religiously doing it. And when I say religiously, I mean from an act of absolute beauty. They've had to really question their own faiths, and I've seen these people, especially I've seen all these people be so attacked by their own clans, their own Christian clans who demonize them and everything else like that when they speak about all of this stuff.
Dave, I think Paul Begley's been attacked physically by the NSA for the things he has talked about in regards to Planet X and other things. So I think he's had a taste of that as well. And of course, I have, and I know Badbaby has. Have you had any physical attacks by anybody for bringing this information forward?
I've been made to feel very. I've been made to feel very kind of like I've been very ridiculed, or made to feel very quite small and shot down by friends and what have you, and that's quite difficult. And I've had to. I don't think I've made it easy for myself. It's been the hardest thing it's been the hardest thing I've ever done. I'll be absolutely honest with you. It's been the most challenging thing I've ever done, without a doubt. I've never been physically attacked, but I'm quite a good diplomat in those situations. And I think the most important thing you can do is, if someone feels that they need to attack you, is let them say what they've got to say. Let them say what they've got to say, and if you let them say what they've got to say and you let them express yourself, like I can remember once I turned up, before I was talking about Planet X, I've always been a political activist, and I decided I was going to run for mayor of when I'd written Laughing Gas, which was all about Planet X, but I didn't know, and it was channeled. There was a lot of it that was channeled to me when I wrote Laughing Gas, and I didn't understand about Planet X at that time, and when I kept saying it, just told me you approach a wall. Can I read you I've got a bit of the book in front of me, and can I read you the fundamental bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're just going to come into a very we're just going to come into a very odd bit of the book here, and I'm not going to give you any kind of pre-setup to it. We're just going to sort of like we're just going to come in, and we can talk about it afterwards. We'll start. Bringing his hand to his heart, he nods at Dobbs. He nods at Dobbs to do the same thing before gently swaying his hand whilst gesturing breathing. He's telling Dobbs to breathe. He opens his mouth and slowly attempts to draw air into his lungs and feels his earth-bound body suddenly breathing, that is now almost gasping for air. Now he senses what is happening here. This is his human body, the biological living mechanism that is being allowed to see the other light body his soul uses beyond this world. Dodd keeps his eyes on Dobbs, who's now becoming acutely aware of his earth-bound body and nearly pulls out of his vision, but Dodd keeps his hand upon his solar plexus, holding Dobbs' attention, with his eyes fixed like stars in the night sky, holding his oar with pinpoint focus. Every breath seems almost unbearably blissful now, as Dodd just nods at him, smiling. He can feel tears running down his cheeks, like they might be his real tears running down his real cheeks. He keeps on breathing, even though his whole being is now shuddering with the intensity. Whatever is now happening, it connects directly to his physical state of being, and he can literally feel the sensation of his earthly body still lying on the bench down on earth. Dodd just keeps on gently nodding with his hand on his heart, encouraging Dobbs to keep all his attention on the sensation of the burning bliss building up within his heart. The more he hones in on the more powerful and intense it becomes, until it almost feels like he's going to explode with ecstasy. Suddenly something with the intensity of the bliss now thundering through him reaches a whole new peak, and he is consumed with the most intense light and feels himself rising out of his light body, and now is escalating rapidly upwards in what seems to be effectively a vertical corridor, barely visible in its burning brightness. Set into the walls of this tower of light are terraces and balconies. They are too bright to get any real sense of the form, and only really the beings that line them stand out, the guardians of the door. Their faces look so beautiful and so bright and so blazing so brightly that he can only weep at their unimaginable grace. Then he sees a lady he recognizes. She curtsies ever so slightly, and in so doing drops her head, almost obscuring her face. But Dobbs knows immediately it's Gatita, and suddenly he feels a pang of that twisted emotional tale that he wouldn't ever want Dodd to know about, and feels so bare and exposed at all the brightness. It's as though these beings are ambassadors greeting him as he moves through, but the intensity of the burning bliss is becoming so bright and so intense that it's as though he's being lifted by this blasting through his solar plexus, as though his core is at the center of a massive jet turbine or the central vortex of a white hole. Finally, the feeling of electrifying elevation begins to subside, and he finds himself in a bodiless state, just a point of bright light, as though he is now in the center of a star. Now he doesn't know if he has truly passed over to the other side. Have I died? And then he hears the oddest sound, mosquitoes, a whole swarm of them. He can feel them landing on him, and somehow suddenly he's in three places. His physical body down on earth, lying on that bench, and yet his soul is sitting on a log in heaven with Dodd, Agent 6 and the Brigadier, whilst at the same time he's here in yet a completely higher realm of consciousness, just witnessing the whole thing. He tries to raise a hand to scare off the mozzies, but as he does so, a clear, resonant voice bellows, "Where would you rather be?" Dobbs freezes, dropping his arms by his side, and listens. He can hear the mosquitoes swarming and feel them biting him and biting his body from head to toe, and the soft, wet tears running down his face. But now he just lays there and lets the little critters take their fill of him. In truth, they make him aware of his physical body, and he's quite relieved to find he's still alive. Wow, he says in his mind, this is something else. He tries to relax into the sensation of being swarmed upon, as though lying on a bed of nails, regulating and harmonizing his breathing again. Here, he finally says in his mind, I want to be here with you. And as he feels the peace of that take him for a few moments, he allows his body to completely relax and feel the awe of the bliss coursing through him. He is pure, blissful feeling now, and exists at the complete disposal of the bliss that holds him, waiting. You're going to write a book, a voice bellows. Dobbs wants to say something almost half cocky, but the intensity of what is happening is just too big to even question. To even ask who speaks would be a silly question, so he just waits quietly, almost scared to ask about what he should write in his book. I want you to invite them in, says the voice, as if reading his thoughts, and then after a short silence it speaks again. I want you to give them the rule, the one and only rule that grants entry. You know that rule. Yes, he answers, feeling the unbridled volume of the unobstructed commodity blasting through him in its most purest state, in quantities so huge he could not understand. Peace, he answers. Yes, peace is the rule. Peace is the only rule. In thought, in word, in action, declare your peaceful intention when departing this world, and it will be denoted as understanding the rule to enter this world. And it will be our binding contract that those who wish to enter have understood. A contract to which all will be bound to occupy the space provided. All understand that rule now, surely. It is very simple. Is the rule not obvious? Yes, but what will I say? Where will I start? As he speaks the words, he feels a flood of what could be described as energy coursing through his earthbound body, like information, but too fast for him to comprehend. It tingles and jars and as it rips through his physical system, though far away. At first it feels like his body is going into muscular spasms, but it almost immediately becomes too much as the energy torrents literally thundering through his liver and kidneys, juddering painfully like a heavy sub-bass, reverberating through him, followed by a feeling akin to an electric shock or plugging loudspeakers in whilst they're switched on and turned up high. A sensation like lightning shots through his kidneys and almost systematically moving through his body. The sensation is positively painful, especially in his right side. It's as though something is scanning his whole body like a laser burning into a hard drive being uploaded with information. Finally, it calms down and his body is able to breathe easily again. Now he's lying there, taking deep breaths and wondering what the hell just happened to him when he hears the voice again. It will come. It will all just come. Dobbs is listening to the words, but is more perplexed by the vision he's seeing. His writing bureau, rather than closed up with all the papers and folders in a mess and odd things he's normally dumped there, all crammed in there, bursting out the side, they're all gone. Now it's immaculately clean and organized, with his desk lamp, which has never worked, illuminated. As he observes the desk, he's lost in a flood of many things running through him, but much more smoothly than before. The process is quite soothing, in fact. The millions of tiny little switches being clicked open, as though his whole body is somehow being calibrated. It feels so caressing and calming, and he just lies there, simultaneously present in all these multiple places, feeling tears running down his face. He's never been aware of his body in this state. To experience this sense of open awareness, grounded in the physical body, is something totally new and indescribably powerful. Finally, the intense peace and overwhelming love begins to fade into a background as the feeling of his body, heavy on the hard surface, comes to the fore until he feels located once more right behind his eyelids once again, and between his ears, listening to the sound of the jungle. At first, all seems unnaturally quiet, but as he listens, he begins to pick up a myriad of tiny twitches and hums, croaks and creaks of earthly sounds, guiding him back into his body. Reaching down, he touches the bare earth with his fingertips, as if reading her frequency like a needle on a record. And then at last, he does the thing he knows we must all do one day. He opens his eyes. After a few seconds, he checks to see if his little friend, the big spider, is coping, but the spider's gone. His whole body is all itching all over from head to toe from where he's been bitten, but rather than scratch, he just lets himself sink into the odd sensation. Agent 6 is sitting up with his head resting to one side, asleep. Looking at him, Dobbs marvels at how lucky he is to have such a beautiful friend, and his eyes fills with tears once more at the thought of all the fantastic adventures they'd had together over the past years. He is now a true brother. Suddenly Dobbs has a thought that makes him shudder from head to toe. But I never came here to find out about this world. What about this world? What about my world? What about my country? I can't write about this other earth or whatever that place is if there's no resolution for my home, no resolution for my world. What about my beautiful earth that is being plundered? Is this world? It's this world I want to save. I know it must seem stupidly naive, but what about Earth? No sooner has he uttered the question, then his mind starts to grasp once again for that painful space that has ruled his being with torment, the whole clusterfuck of doom and gloom scenarios that he so desperately does not wish to carry anymore. Just Just as he's about to go down that old familiar route into that quagmire of guilt and pain, all his woes are suddenly vaporized like the morning mist by a peace so serene that it just washes through him like an aftershock and nearly sweeps him away, leaving only an unutterable sense of calm and the words lingering in his heart like a fragrance hanging in the air. Don't worry, I've already deployed my best. Unprecedented peace will now be waged upon your earth. The words are drenched in so much bliss, and he feels like he could curl up inside of them, and the tears just flood down from his eyes. Thank you. Wow. That's a little excerpt from it was on an ayahuasca ceremony that inspired me to write Laughing Gas, and that was the kind of like the one of the fundamental kind of pivotal visions that inspired me to. When I read that, I'm just like, ooh.
So, Dave, let me ask you this, Dave. So, yes. You did the ayahuasca ceremony, and you had the out-of-body experiences. That was basically you interpreted in the portion of what you just read.
Yeah. So it was. I used to sell fudge at a festival, and you can guess what was in my fudge at those festivals. I won't actually say it over the phone because that would be, you've got loads of states where there's certain new things that are very legal to sell
sure.
like buy and sell in America, but they're not so legal in my country, and so I don't really want to say specifically. But you can obviously guess you might be able to guess what was in them, and you might be correct if you guess. But
yeah.
I'd rather not say.
Right, no need to.
Yeah, let's not go there. Okay, I don't want to change the subject or anything, but before the chat gets going here, we got a couple questions in the chat for you, Dave. And we have guest 5 and guest 7 who have both asked, and we'll address guest 5 first. And guest 5 wants to know, is it also strong cold wind off the North Sea, Dave?
Can you ask me that question again?
They want to know if there is a strong cold wind that's coming off the North Sea.
It's not so much as a cold north wind. I mean, I don't know because I'm nowhere near the North Sea really. I'm in the Pyrenees, so I'm right down south. But unless that's a coded question that I don't quite, unless that's a sudden sort of like
okay. Well, we tried guest 5, and then we have another question from guest 7. And they want to know if on the blocked Google star map, view of the dragon next to Saturn that occurred on September 23rd. If you can comment on that.
Is that because Steve's been talking a lot about this, hasn't he? In the what being seen in the it looks like in the Virgo constellation. Is that what maybe he's talking about that? I've got to be honest with you. My astronomical kind of like because my whole kind of astronomical kind of process has been involved about looking not into our night sky but all around our sun and trying to work out our movements of this thing going over the top of our sun. I'd never really considered myself an astronomer because I'm more of an umbraphile, which means I chase eclipses. And I'm always trying to see what's beyond and around our sun as I look at it. And that's astronomical research. But there's been lots of more sightings coming in the night sky just lately as this whole system is now moving, it's coming past the kind of like, it's coming back out, in my opinion, it's coming back out past Earth and heading now out into our night sky. So it's coming much more into the kind of normal understanding of the astronomical kind of community. So people, the astronomical community are jumping on board a lot more now because they associate astronomical research with what you can see in the night sky far more than what you can see in the day sky. So I'm not trying to bail out on that question really, because I just don't want to pretend that I'm some kind of astronomer when I'm not really. I've had to try and make a lot of research about understanding what's occurring in our day sky. But I would say that all of our ancients, that when we look at all, if we look at all the Sumerian texts and all the Sumerian imagery, that we've seen people like Zachar Sitchin that have put forward, and we look at what's happened with the Hopis, and we look at what's happened in the Mayans, and we look at what's happened in Egypt. All the images of Nibiru is always shown like it's an eagle with two wings, and I am of a mind that it's depicted as an eagle because when an eagle comes in, it comes in from the sun. It doesn't eclipse or block out the sun as it comes in. It uses the sun to come in so you cannot see it, and it glides in. It doesn't flap its wings or anything. It glides in. You cannot see it coming in, which means it can take you completely off guard. And this is pretty much how this thing is coming in now. It's only those who are very, very observant can really take it on board. And even if they can see it and they get a view of it, they're going to struggle to get past their own belief systems that will restrict them from seeing it also. So we're all in this point of place where we're all trying to get a window and a grasp of it, where it is and that sort of stuff. But it is heading into our night sky. But by the time we're all observing it in our night sky, this thing will be on its way out, really. And so it's in its last it's in its last phase of approach now, literally in its last phase of approach. Well, in my opinion, late October, we're going to start getting the asteroids as we go over the tail of it. And then on December, because we saw the massive earthquake that happened on the 22nd of November 2016, where we saw the parts of the plate in New Zealand rise up 2 meters, and we saw the simultaneous earthquake that occurred in Fukushima. If we apply the same logic of what we saw in 2010, 2011, and we give 1 year and 12 days from the 22nd of November 2016, we come to the big kind of like earthquake point that we absolutely have to start consider that is a very kind of obvious kind of point where we could expect a massive earthquake, literally 10 point plus.
Yeah,
on the
Dave,
4th of December.
I wanted to jump in real quick. I don't know how if you've noticed, but if you look at the Juan de Fuca Cascadia plate, it has been pretty much devoid of earthquakes now, going on a week and a half, 2 weeks, or longer. To me, that's a telltale sign that pressure is building. That may be the next large earthquake that can erupt here in the west coast of the United States, which in turn, if it's large enough, of course, would cause a massive tsunami into Washington, California, Oregon, so on and so forth, even into British Columbia. Do you see that as well?
I see us, the way it's explained to me, and the message I've got is that we will choose the severity of this by the actions that we take right now. Just remember what happened in 2011. What happened the week before immediately Fukushima happened. What also occurred that our governments could massively control. It was NATO went to war. NATO put the message out. They invited humanity into a war, and Britain, America, the NATO alliance invaded Libya. They didn't send all those jets out and all those bombers out to drop aid on Japan or to cover sort of like Fukushima with sand or do all that sort of stuff. They were dropping bombs on
Libya. Yes, I do remember
Libya.
that. Yes, I do remember.
What is happening is this thing is coming in now as we get closer and closer. They're now drumming up the message of war, and we can see if we want to understand the severity of the earthquakes that are going to occur. All we have to do is understand the severity of the war that we're going to wage on innocent sovereign countries. That is how you can gauge how bad this is going to be. I know that sounds really, really weird, but this is how you can gauge the severity. It's what you wish for other people as a whole nation is what the severity of this earthquakes and everything else will be. I know that sounds so full on and difficult to perceive, but the energies that can protect us can only protect us if we're peace. They cannot engage in protecting that which is savagely hateful and of war, because the universe does not allow the engagement of high vibrational beings to be involved with that which is trying to take the life of innocent people. It cannot engage in assisting us because it is assisting a dark agenda, and then it entwines itself in the negative karma therein, and it doesn't want to do that. If we choose to be savage in this, then we will get savage. We will have a savage experience in return. I know that sounds full on.
Well,
absolutely. Guest 5 says it makes complete sense, Dave. And guest 5 has a question for you. They want to know, was the 8.4 off of Mexico and the 7.1 in Mexico City a preview of the big one that is to come?
It's not even close to that. You understand what caused that? Was that big one was, if you look at where Planet X, in my model, and you look at Planet X, where Planet X is at that point, it's roughly, Planet X was roughly at 3 o'clock, a little bit less than that, like 2:30, 3 o'clock position to where we were at that time. So if we were looking, as we're looking at the sun, at that point when the earthquake occurred, picture you're looking at the sun, and as you're looking at the sun, perpendicular or right angle to the sun, that is where Nemesis is sitting. But Nemesis is actually, even though it's sitting at a right angle to the sun, it's actually sitting below the ecliptic. So in that, what actually occurred at the point of that earthquake is Venus went between Planet X and the sun at that point. And when it crosses between, if you look at what happens on Earth when you get an alignment between, when you get 3 planets aligning, and we can see it most commonly when the sun, the moon, and Earth become aligned. Now, if we think about the moon going round and around and around Earth, you can understand that the distance is a relative constant. It doesn't go further or it doesn't get nearer or further. It actually does get nearer. It's got a slight elliptic kind of movement there, and it changes a little tiny bit. But it's not big enough to allow for the massive difference we see in tidal shift. What makes the big shift in terms of tide is the moon's alignment with the Earth and the sun. And when we get that alignment, we suddenly get what we call a high tide. And it's almost like, there's different ways of explaining it, and there's different perceptions to that. But it's almost as if, picture you've got a shopping bag, and you've got lots of you've got a load of shopping in that bag, and then I put a big item also into that bag. And so suddenly, this is the way I see it in my mind, in my simple mind. You put a heavy thing into that bag also, and suddenly your arm drops, doesn't it, to compensate for the weight of it, and then you have to pull up higher to balance that out. So you have this point where your hand drops to compensate. This differential is everything, it goes into its equilibrium state, and you obviously have to apply more force to hold that up and everything else of that. And so we get this kind of balance of this change. And it's those gravitational arms of energy that are kind of reaching out, pulling on Earth. Suddenly something cuts in between that, and it changes that whole energy. And in that moment, we see a massive solar flare as the sun changes. It has this kind of it has a kind of a wobble. When Venus went in between Planet X and the sun, we saw the sun release a massive solar flare, and this affected Earth's gravity. It caused a flux in Earth's gravitational energy, which led to an earthquake. We're going to see very much the same thing as we become in line with Planet X and the sun. We're going to have the same thing, but it's going to be obviously a lot bigger because it's going to directly affect the gravitational energy. And we're already seeing, obviously, because it's kind of below us and it's pulling on our South Pole, so it's pulling all of the oceans towards the South Pole at the moment. So the South Pole is obviously getting, in my opinion, we've seen the oceans go out in Brazil. We've seen the oceans go out in Argentina. We saw the same thing happen in Florida. and they're telling us it's the winds and that sort of stuff. Yet we've never seen this happen before. It's how someone could just try and fill this in with just a bit of bullshit when we know that.
Yeah, Dave, I was just going to say, as Marshall Masters says, and I'm sure you know who he is, he basically, they want everybody to die in place and to keep, 90% of the planet asleep. And where do most people live? On coastlines. So, the agenda seems like it's well entrenched and well in hand because most people are not paying attention to what's really happening, and they buy the nonsense of what you just said. The ocean's receding out and they're not coming back for 36 hours. Well, what would cause that? It's an accentuation, from my opinion, Dave, an accentuation of the wobble of the Earth because it's being electromagnetically affected by our sun, which is in turn being affected by Planet X. So it makes perfect sense.
Absolutely, it's so obvious. It's so obvious, but just coming back to that sentence that you just said, they want us to sort of to basically voluntarily commit harikari, and this apparently this is what Zecharia Sitchin was talking about when it came round in his days, and they were talking about on those tablets, talking about how they had the same situation going on. They felt the Earth was overpopulated, and it's the they. We assume it's us that wants to kill ourselves. But imagine if we look at the Tower of Babel, and the story of the Tower of Babel and how Earth was divided, and what it says we understand that the Bible is what Zecharia Sitchin and all these kind of greats kind of telling us, and Gardner, what was his name? Lawrence Gardner, and sort of like the Grail Kings, whatever it was. The blah, 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 blah. I can't remember the name of the title of his book now, but he was talking about the same. They're basically talking about how the Bible has just been plagiarized by the Roman Catholic Church, or what was Rome, and how they've kind of plagiarized so much of the stuff of the Bible. That doesn't mean that the Bible's not true, which is why it's so important to come to the Bible with a sense of faith and realize, take the teachings, but don't get lost in belief. Because if you start believing all this stuff is true and you're missing the deep messages there that might be locked in those teachings, you could be led to be attacking, like Syria is where the Bible comes from. That is the Mesopotamian text. That is Samaria. There's people that we're attacking there, that we're saying that we're demonizing. It's actually the origin of this Bible. We're actually attacking. In the Samaria, there was only one. The whole idea of the globe was a united globe, and we can already see that in so much of the architecture, of the ancient architecture that we discover. From the pyramids to sort of like to architecture in the sort of like Central and South America to global kind of like understanding that we had some common traits of, we found Indian kind of like what do they call the Sanskrit text in South America. We can understand that there was global consciousness that united the whole planet from the Sumerian perspective. And then the Tower of Babel, something about the Tower of Babel came along and we were divided. And I believe the way we were divided was with thought. It wasn't with language. Language is an extension of the thought which is projected into our minds, that we think we are this nonsense. And this is how we've been controlled. And the Bible often is kind of like run through these channels of belief that overrides our faith, that we become these automatrons that can obey these ridiculous rules, that we can be told to do this sort of stuff in the name of belief, that we can blindly believe and go against our hearts, go against our feelings, override that which is our natural kind of authority to discern. And this is where we're coming to now, is this point of we have to start discerning again, and we have to start seeing through the fact that we're actually there's actually nothing wrong with humanity, believe it or not. This part that is subverting us is not actually humanity at all. It is the subversion of humanity, the big they, which want us to commit hara-kiri and not see this and not act accordance to this. There's other ways that we can control and solve the problem of Earth's overpopulation. We can change our understanding in sexual education. We can change our understanding in the way in which we reproduce. There's so many ways that we could correct this problem without just trying to lead ourselves into the point where we could openly take part in leading our brothers and sisters to basically commit suicide by not taking necessary actions in accordance to the movements of Planet X.
Well, I'm in agreement with you and what you said. There is a question from guest 7, too, if you don't mind me doing this, Bad Baby.
You go
guest 7, guest 7 asks comments on the sun simulator that has been postulated by Planet X News, Planet X News Scott C. and Dr. Claudia Albers. What's your take on that?
What about the? Are we talking about the sun simulator?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you remember when when Wayne Steiger got involved with Steve Olson, WSO?
Yes.
And I love Wayne Steiger. I've got to tell you, I absolutely adore Wayne Steiger. When you listen to Wayne Steiger speak, he's do you remember where it was like when Batman meets Robin, wasn't it? When Wayne Steiger suddenly got there was like the two superheroes.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
It was just like I didn't know who was the kickback or who was the main superhero and who was the sort of kickback. The pair of them were just fantastic, and they were but Wayne just kind of like, he's fantastically educational, and Wayne was like, he was like BP Earthwatch or someone like that. He was bringing in this new, and he Wayne just made everyone up their game a little bit and brought a whole load of new scientific data, and it was very exciting. And he was really bringing all this exciting data, and he wanted absolute evidence, and he wanted a lot more sort of like, I think up to that point, Steve was a lot more kind of like on a Christian footing, and he came in from a Christian footing, and he got shot down by so many Christians, and in the end of it, he had to start looking, he had to start going in the sort of direction that Zachar Sitchin and Lawrence Gardner and all the rest of these kind of classics that were kind of taking another perspective and actually taking his own beliefs apart and coming back to the raw faith. And I've watched so many of the Planet X community come in from a perspective of Christianity and have to evolve their whole understanding and jump it up a level. But when Wayne Steiger came in, he was bringing, he was the one who he came in on, which they'd shut down Stereo Secchi B, hadn't they? And they'd kept Stereo Secchi A going. And it was Stereo Secchi A that kept capturing that massive object. Do you remember that massive object? That kept
yeah. Oh, yes.
And it was just huge beyond belief. It was bigger than planets. It was literally bigger than planets. And NASA was saying, and all these different people coming along saying it was lens flare. And of course, Wayne Steiger came along and said, "Lens flare? Give me a break. This thing doesn't use lenses. This thing it picks up high energy particles. There's no lenses involved in this system. It's literally high energy particles that this thing is picking up, positive and negative energy particles. There's no lenses involved in this system. And whatever that thing is there. It's not being seen in the light spectrum. It's only being picked up in terms of, like say, high energy particles of positive or negatively charged particles. And so whatever that thing is there, it doesn't exist in the light spectrum. It's whatever it is, this massive, great sphere. And we see this thing up there all the time. We see it at various stages, covering up the sun in various scenes. And we have to start to think, there is no way that we could ever conceive manufacturing something that big in space. It's beyond our scope. It's beyond anything that we've ever dreamt of in any science fiction novel. It's beyond anything imaginable in our scope of of imagination, let no one even be able to sort of conceive it as a scientific idea or conceive it as a science fiction idea. You know, we look at how big the spaceships we make in science fiction movies. In Star Trek, we're still talking about ships the size of kind of like our kind of naval ships, biggest naval ships that we can make in terms of our ships in space. You know, this is big as we can think. When we talk about the Death Star in Star Wars, we're talking about something that was just absolutely fantastic, because obviously Zekai Sitchin had come along with this kind of idea of Planet X, and so we invented this kind of the Death Star in Star Wars. But that thing is just like that thing dwarfs planets.
It's as big as the sun. It's as big as the sun. I mean, when you look at it, you could put it within the, how they have the sun blocked out with the dark sphere, and then they show you the white inner circle where the sun or actual size of the sun is. Well, that's as big as the sun. So that would tell me it sure looks like a brown dwarf star, a dead star that, just either petered out or never made it as a star and became a brown dwarf star. However it works, but it's certainly there. That's without a fact. Watching that, seeing it, there's no doubt in my mind.
Well, I'm the same, and when I couldn't obviously go off and do ayahuasca. Once I'd got this message in South America on ayahuasca, because my parents are both channels, I knew what my parents had done, but I'd never tried to go down that path myself. I'd never known how to open that door. To me, kind of like opening the similar doors my parents opened was kind of, the idea of doing that was kind of ayahuasca and going on these wild adventures in South America or wherever I'd go, and that was kind of. But then I was young at that stage, and when I'd been told I was going to write a book, I rang my father about 7 years before he died. And I'd not seen my father. I'd left home, and I'd found the whole thing all so weird that I kind of never stepped. I know that sounds so terrible, doesn't it? He was quite a strict man, even though he channeled beauty. He was quite a strict man, and I never really got on with him that much as a kind of a father figure. And I know it's so bad. I'd never kept communication with him. I just found him I just found the whole thing too weird. I'd kept him at arm's length. That was so weird and so wrong. But anyway, I came back from South America and I rang him up and I said, Dad, I'm so sorry I haven't been in contact for so long. I said, the whole thing, I think it was all a bit too weird for me. And he said, son, that's fine. Don't you worry about a thing. And I say, oh, Dad, you say that. And I said, but Dad, I've got to tell you something. I said, I've gone out to South America and I've met this shaman. I didn't tell him the whole ayahuasca thing because I thought he would find it a bit weird. But I said, look, I've met this shaman and he told me I'm going to write a book. And he said, but I think to write this book, if I'm really going to do it, I kind of have to learn to do this thing that you always did, that I always found so weird. And my dad said to me, he said, son, if you're going to do that, he said, I can only give you one message, and it's a painful message to hear. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, you've got to understand, son, you're not special. I was like, okay. And he said, that's painful to hear, but he said, understand. He said, what comes to you, you might be told that you're going to write a book, but he said, what will come to you can only be merited by the effort that you're willing to put in. There's no one more special than anyone else on this plane. There's no one more special in this universe than anyone else in this universe. He said, what comes to you will be merited by the effort that you're willing to put in, or it will go to someone else. Whatever's destined to come to help this earth will fall into the hands of those who are making the effort to utilize, and it will be gift to them. He said, so you'll have to make the effort to bring whatever it is that they've said will come to you. You'll have to work for that.
Wow.
And so I said, okay. And so I said, well, how did you do it? And he said he did it by, he said, I did it by writing practice. I got up every day and I wrote for a certain amount of hours every day, and I wrote everything that came through me so I could charter myself and know which part of myself was the best part that I wanted to bring out. And I worked on bringing that out until I learned to channel. He said, but I didn't know, it didn't originally go to channel. And he said, you're going to have to do a similar process, and you're going to have to begin your journey. And no one knows how that journey will unfold, but it will be your sacred journey within your own self, and no one will know yourself better than you. And you'll begin that journey, and if it comes, it comes, but it will be merited by the efforts you make. And so I started doing this thing, and eventually I opened this door. And when I opened this door, I said, when do you step in? I'd opened this communication to this thing that had communicated to me on ayahuasca. And I said, when do you step in? And the answer I got was, at the moment, I have both feet in. It said, but you have to understand that if you do not want me, I'll take both feet out.
Good point.
Wow. Okay. Dave, we got a couple of questions in the chat, and after we address these questions, I want to get into what your trajectory is predicting for us in the next couple months. But let's address these questions. Is Jeff P. correct about the sun and moon simulators? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, very, very similar. I've got to say, I love Jeff P. I actually adore Jeff P. He's a bit like Steve. He's constantly doing it. He's constantly out there, and he's constantly stayed with his sun simulator of understanding it. He's kind of more of an idea that it's kind of a NASA kind of like or something that governments have put up there, and to a certain degree maybe it is, or maybe it's being controlled by some dark agenda. It's definitely real. It's definitely real. If it wasn't for the sun simulator or this thing that is shielding us, Earth would be dragged away by this thing, because it's not just a sun simulator, as I'm understanding it. In my opinion, this thing it takes the energy of our sun and it regulates the amount of solar energy that we're getting, but it also is stopping Earth being sucked up into the gravitational field of Planet X. When we get close to it, that thing should suck us up. It's like a massive tow truck that tows us past it as well. So it stretches the Earth a little bit as we go through it. So we're always going to get a certain amount of earthquakes when we go through regardless, because when we've got all these different forces acting together, there's all this kind of anomalous behavior that is going to go on that we're going to have to navigate through. But there's enormous great protection that's being offered to Earth at the moment through this. Maybe there is dark energy. There is definitely dark energies. We know there's dark energies at play on this Earth at the moment that are trying to subvert this Earth for their own agenda. It's another God that is on this Earth at the moment that arrived, as I'm understanding it. Higher intelligence that sees itself as our God. And the message I was given is that though they have a play in this. So some of us are seeing this sun simulator as being from a dark side. Some of us are seeing it from a light side. Some of us are seeing it that it's trying to hide it so we can't see it. Some of us are seeing it as that this attempt to hide it is actually just an attempt to protect us from the radiation that is spewing from it, because we are in such close proximity to that radiation that it would do us. So there's different perspectives, but it brings us to this attention that there is this other, this what arrived that caused the big cataclysms that we would call the Great Flood, and it's a whole other story really, but it kind of brings into this understanding that there is another agenda which is subverting this world and wants to retain control of humanity. And there is this higher side that's trying to give us a window of opportunity that wants to bring autonomy back to humanity, where, if you like, this point of subversion, the transmitter. You see, the transmitter is the bit that's got to go here, the bit that is transmitting the kind of thought wave that humanity thinks it is this thing, that thinks it wants to destroy itself to protect itself, that thinks that it can just be quiet and just allow us to just go and do nothing and let all these, let Fukushima repeat itself again. You know, when when we go over it on the 4th of December again, that, you know, all these thoughts that are subverting humanity, this is all part of a dark agenda. Whether that's the same agenda that's built the Sun Simulator, I don't think it is. I think the Sun Simulator is there to protect us. And Jeff is open to all different ideas. Jeff is just trying to show us the Sun Simulator. He doesn't know whether it's good or bad or right or wrong, and he's open to all ideas. But he's just desperately trying to show us, and he's staying true to his cause. And that's what I love about him. He's constantly on it. He's taken his little part in this. As Steve Olson, he's taken his part in this of just trying to keep the information going out there, not trying to take, like me or Jeff. Jeff takes a specific stance, or I take a specific stance in my flyby days. You know, we all take a kind of a different perspective in this, and we try and when we realize that our most powerful point is representing our truth. There's something up there. We can see it. We've all seen it. Sometimes you get that beautiful ring around it, but sometimes that ring is so beautiful and so fantastic. It looks like an eye. It looks like a perfect kind of godly eye looking down at us, observing us. And I can promise you that which brings Planet X is the kind of regulating, in my opinion, or as I'm told, is the regulating kind of policeman of Earth, because that which truly created humanity on this planet, if humanity goes onto war, then that which created us is also of war. And if war spawns out of this Earth, then from humanity, then that which created humanity is spawning war out onto the universe. And that which created us will not allow us to take war into the greater universe, will contain that. Planet X is containment. That's all it is. It will be as bad as we choose it to be. It will be as easy as we choose it to be. It is our choice. Remember what happened in the days of the Spanish Armada? The Catholics believed that they should wage war at that time. And remember that the biggest investment in the US dollar comes via the Catholic Church and all their investment into the sort of like into the American government, into the federal government. And so much religious entry of big money comes in via these religious organizations that will try and push America into going into a state of war, push America into pressing the button. And so this is what we've got to try and realize, that in all of this big story, whether it's being a Sun Simulator and all this sort of stuff, we need to start bringing all this stuff back down and boiling it back down into the real kind of assistance that's coming into this Earth, and what is going to facilitate that assistance, and whether we want to be on one side or the other. We need to come back to a place of, are we at peace or are we at war? Do we feel that it's time? You know, look at what's happening with North Korea at the moment. Apparently North Korea is the bad boy, isn't it? They're the ones we've got to nuke. They're the bad boys.
Or at least they're made to look that way, Dave. You know?
Well, this concept that they're the bad boy is because you understand that we're trying to go, you know, what's happening is that America's being goaded into going after Iran by Israel. They're saying you need to bomb Iran, you need to bomb Syria, you need to attack Mesopotamia, the birthplace of the Bible, the true birthplace of Jesus. Jesus' parents came from Damascus. They were in Jerusalem paying their taxes to Rome, coming from Mesopotamia that believed in Nibiru. And so when we talk about when we're actually talking about North Korea, you know, they're saying that this point, North Korea, every time there's an earthquake, North Korea says, "Oh, we've let off another nuclear bomb." Just about when America's just about to bomb Iran because they're a nuclear threat, North Korea pipes up, says, "Oh, we've just detonated a nuclear bomb."
Dave, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something. What do you? I don't know how closely you follow, because you said earlier that, you know, you were brought into at a young age through the channeling, you didn't even know what was going on, but you learned a lot about it. What do you think about remote viewing, and what do you think about Ed Dane's predictions that are pretty much, as far as today, they've all pretty much come to pass, talking about North Korea exploding a nuclear weapon, which we don't know whether they have one or they did explode one. We don't know anything, but we're hearing a lot of talk about that. What's your take on Ed Dames and his remote viewing kill shot video?
Well, personally, we're finishing the North Korea thing. Before I go on to Ed, is it Ed Dames, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And so just finishing that, because now the same place where the earthquake occurred that was supposed to be a nuclear bomb, they've just had more earthquakes there, as you probably heard. And so now the American government and the whole media are now jumping forward and saying, they've either detonated another nuclear bomb, or the nuclear bomb they detonated is causing a chain reaction of lots of other earthquakes. Mm-hmm. And so they're desperately trying to spin these kind of earthquakes, suddenly realizing this is suggesting that these are naturally occurring. So North Korea is taking advantage of the fact that the Western governments are completely denying Nibiru exists and saying, okay, so you're going to run a lie to your people to try and walk them into committing hara-kiri and not taking appropriate action when this thing comes by. Number one, not storing food. If you don't store food and the whole economy collapses and everything, you get hungry people. Hungry people make angry people. Angry people make wars.
But you know what, David? Okay. That's going to happen regardless, because once Nibiru comes by or they collapse the economy, regardless, that is going to happen, period. That's already baked in the cake, wouldn't you say?
Well, okay, so we are going to go to the remote viewing. I'm not coming away from that, but understand nature doesn't use warehouses. It doesn't store food in warehouses. It's just like us. It puts its entire genius into, if you like, intellectual property. What Monsanto tried to take over and directly kind of like control by duplicating that technology, but isolating specific parts of that intellectual property and coming up with seed that it owns, that it has intellectual property rights over. And so we understand that, but nature itself, it works quite slowly, but it puts its entire genius into seed so that we don't have to store food. We can just keep going. Earth has survived for eons and eons without the petrodollar, without anything. People just planted seed and they grew food and that sort of stuff, and they had a relationship with the land. There is no necessity for us to starve. There really isn't, even with a massive population. It's just the landed gentry desperately wants to keep ownership of all their land, because that's how they identify their wealth and their power. There's no need for people to starve. There's absolutely no need.
Yeah, I agree.
We agree. So we kind of fall into this narrative that we need to starve. If there's no preparation, and we choose just to walk off the edge and we don't store food, we don't kind of store seed. Think about Aleppo, center of the kind of Mesopotamian story in terms of sort of like Samaria and that sort of stuff. And we think of all the bombing and everything else and the terrible place of Aleppo. But actually, in the 20th century, our 20th and 21st century understanding of Aleppo was the biggest storage of organic seed in Mesopotamia. That's where we stored all the seeds. So you can understand that bombing Aleppo was bombing the biggest storage of organic seed in the Middle East. It was literally annihilating all the organic seed to force this kind of dependence on Monsanto and this independence on sort of imported seed from things like Monsanto and everything else like that. But so we can sort of see the strategy that big corporations are using to drive the world into war, so they become dependent on sort of like on Monsanto and non-organic kind of like GMOs and everything else like that. We can see their whole line, and so we can see this whole angle of where they're going and the narratives that they're feeding into us. When if we could understand now that if we were to all start preparing and we were all to start opening our eyes to this, if one person in every community was to like store food, store seed, and and different people start storing food, we could potentially survive this if enough people engage.
Right.
We don't have to. We don't have to commit hara-kiri,
isn't it, Dave? I mean, we have to learn that when all this occurs, what we own, who we are, a lot of people think, oh, I'm better than my neighbor down here because I have a Cadillac. None of that matters. What's going to matter is how we come together and help one another, because it is going to be a trying event, and we are not going to survive it if we don't come together and love and help one another.
Absolutely, and maybe in this process, I'm always up for a miracle. I'm really up for a miracle. What I was told, the first communication I got in South America when I first opened up the door kind of to this kind of message coming through, I said, I just want to understand what's going on. And I literally got this kind of communication, and it said,
I need to share something with you that happened to me last night. I actually, as I was going to sleep last night, and I was saying my prayers and asking the Lord to show me my path, I kind of was in a realm sleep, and I had a third eye vision. And then I got to tell you, it was kind of so bone-chilling that I don't want to share it all with you, but I will share one thing that stood out, and that was I was kind of looking like I was looking at a film that was in black and white. And what I was seeing was people running, and I was seeing the planet being struck by, I want to say, meteors or large hail balls. I couldn't really tell, but I saw a lot of devastation. And I got the impression that this is soon to happen. Now, with what I saw last night in that vision, Dave, does that line up with what you're telling us is going to occur around the end of October?
Okay, well, let's answer that by answering the other question as well, which because we were going to go to remote viewing, and that kind of takes us nicely for you as well, Robert, to go to the to answer the remote viewing question, because that's a kind of similar thing, isn't it? To me, that's I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know the answer to this question. What I'm doing is I'm putting information together, and I'm trying to understand on different levels what's happening. And so, to me, that's as much remote viewing as I can't remember his name, the guy you were talking about.
Ed Dames.
Ed Dames. Because I hear about him and that sort of stuff, and I hear about remote viewing. But the thing is that the truth is that nobody knows the outcome. Nobody knows the outcome. We are deciding the outcome moment by moment. But there's an Akashic record, if you like, and that Akashic record has a kind of, people can predict from that Akashic record. There seems to be some sort of futuristic projection that comes from this. How that's generated, maybe it's a gift from that which created this earth. There's no preset pathway. There's some people believe that remote viewers are actually going off to alternative realities of this reality, where they splinter off and big changes happen in this reality that are so seismic that they cause a splintering off in multiple different dimensions, so that they witness other kind of like other dimensional timelines that are kind of variations of this timeline. No one obviously knows, and the most important thing is that if we have a preview of the future, we have to decide whether we can change that. And I'll give you one example of that. Is that I can see that we're going to go over the tail of this. I can see that without a doubt we're going to go over the tail of this, in my opinion. Kind of, he ran about, it went in front of us. It crossed the path that Earth orbits around the sun. Below that path, in my opinion, about 23rd, 24th, 25th of September, maybe the 27th of September. I might be wrong about that, but it's very difficult to say exactly. But around about kind of, mid to late, more to the late September, much more to the late September, it crossed the path. Now, we're traveling at 67,000 miles an hour, and we are going to reach that same space, like I said in my last videos, around about, like you say, late October. And so you can sort of see it's thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away from us now. Even though we're approaching it at 67,000 miles an hour, that tail, right now, we're approaching that tail, and we will go over the top. How much protection? In one of my first or second videos about Planet X, we see this, what looks like an asteroid cutting through our atmosphere, and then it comes down, and it literally lands in top of a cloud. I don't know if you remember seeing that incredible footage. It looks like an asteroid. It hits a cloud, and it stops in this cloud, and you've got this ball of white light, like molten plasma or molten white hot metal or white hot plasma, or whatever that thing is made of. Like lava, and it drips down from the cloud, drop by drop by drop, with these kind of like this kind of vapor trail coming off these drops of molten kind of like asteroids that are just dripping down, being supported by this white ball of light suspended in this cloud. And I was there. I was doing an interview with Bart, who I did those first few interviews with, and we showed this kind of odd twin tail that lands in the cloud and then drips down. And this person filming it, like, what the hell is happening there?
I do remember those, yes.
It was like high technology that was captured, that had protected the Earth at that point by creating something that could catch an asteroid. Impossible to believe, but there you have this thing coming through, doing all of that sort of stuff. And so, you see something, the first image that I saw of Planet X in the dream that I had that led me to finding it was I saw Planet X. No, hang on. I was being chased by soldiers, and it was pitch black. I was terrified. I was being chased by soldiers, and I was terrified. They were demonic. They were absolutely. They'd been consumed by the hate that they thought they were, and this hate had consumed them. And I was running, and suddenly a friend jumped out in front of me, and I went, Huggy, Huggy. I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And I didn't shout out to him, why are two grey soldiers chasing after me? I said to him, where's the sun gone? Where's the sun gone? Where's the sun gone? Not, who are those two soldiers running after me, trying to kill me? Now, that was a vision I saw, and I said, "What? Why's the sun?" And he pointed up to the skies, and he said, "Because of that." And I looked
Dave,
where
just let me stop you.
Hold on. Let me just finish that one change. Just to answer that kind of like point, was that was my vision, but that vision can never come to pass, in my opinion, because I know what could block out the sun. I could never be that person pointing up saying, why is the sun gone out? Because I've changed that point of that timeline. I know if there's an eclipse, I know what's going to cause it. I can never be that person pointing up to that saying, why is the sun gone out? Because I know why the sun's gone out. So we sometimes see things in the future that gives us the opportunity to change that timeline, to change that kind of like that projection. And so it could be an alternative future. It could be a projection of the Akashic record. It could just be a total vision. It could be that we go into these other universes that is remote viewing. We obviously we're stuck with this little universe and our little world and our little universe, and we've got to make the most of it here and try and apply all this kind of information into transforming and recycling our experience here and turning it into something better all the time at every juncture. Hopefully that in some way answers a multitude of those questions, because obviously I don't know whether there are these alternative universes or anything else like that. I've certainly read some of my fair share of alternative universe kind of books. But,
well, I was simply going to say that when I was talking about remote viewing, and you brought up about the fact that you had these two soldiers chasing you, and your friend was there, why are they chasing me? And then you say, where's the sun? Where's the sun gone? What's funny about that is with Ed Dames talking about his kill shot in his video that he made many years ago, he says one of the last things we will see before the kill shot takes place, the very last thing, he says, you'll have all these warring parties all over the world. They're going to look up, and they're going to look up into the sky, and all of a sudden they're going to put down their weapons because suddenly their perspective has changed. If they're no longer worried about killing each other, they basically drop their weapons to go home to their families. So that's funny that you would bring that up, because that's one of the last things he talks about in his kill shot remote viewing session. Extraordinary.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. I actually was shown, the first vision I was ever shown within it all was we all had guns on each other. We all had guns on each other. And then suddenly, in a moment, all the guns, they're all pointed at every gun. Everyone's holding a gun at another human being. And then suddenly, all the guns change, and they're all pointing to one direction. And they're all pointing towards what is just a massive ocean.
Incredible.
And suddenly we all collectively realize that we're all being invaded by, you think about what is driving this, NATO, we think it's North America or whatever it is, but it's North Atlantic. It's always the North Atlantic that is driving this. And we think about Turkey and everything else like that, all these different people it's NATO that is driving this. This is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. These are always maritime organizations that are driving us into a state of war, aren't they? Have you noticed that?
Absolutely.
And if we start thinking that the biggest part of this Earth is actually covered in oceans, and I'm of a mind that the subversion is living in our oceans, and is constantly trying to drive us into war and trying to drive us away from seeing that. And if we look at, say, our courtroom systems, where we have a bar, and the judge is behind his bar, he's the lordship, not necessarily a friendship, it's a relationship. And then we have to step out of our common law rights. We have to step out of off our land, and we step into the dock, where the judge, who places himself beyond the land when he goes into this thing. So we've built this this temple to this maritime law, where the judge opens himself up by stepping into this place, where he becomes a channel for a maritime entity to judge through him, where you voluntarily step out of your sovereign rights on common law land, where the judge can then enact his judgment upon you whilst you are not whilst you are not in your sovereign rights. And so we have this total relationship where we can see how the maritime law directly rules over us through our law systems, where it's all done through our consent, where we agree to give up our sovereign rights, which is the whole kind of free man on the land thing, which kind of led me to actually, it was that whole process, as much as anything, that led me to finding Nibiru, understanding how our law processes are kind of these maritime temples. That you think about what the symbol of the occult symbol, but actually the occult symbol, what we call occult, is just a maritime compass symbol.
Right. No, Dave, I agree with you. I mean, why is your birth certificate? Why is your name in all capital letters? Right? Because you have indoctrinated into the system.
Yeah, and why is a
Okay,
parent
we have
informant?
a question, honey, in the chat again. They want to ask you, guest 7 would like to ask you to comment on the Anunnaki and how they will affect the planet during the Planet X passage.
Well, I have to assume that I don't know. None of us know, so this is just guesswork here. But I'm assuming that the blue Kachina is the planet at which whatever the Planet X kind of like system is, that it has a blue Kachina, so their heat source comes from the red dwarf planet. But I'm assuming that that there's life on the blue Kachina, that's where the life actually exists, and that they have an atmosphere. And I suspect that atmosphere is made of gold. And there's been a lot of understanding there's been a whole new understanding in the understanding of gold in terms of monoatomic gold. Because when monoatomic gold, single atoms of gold are energized or heated, they seem to do this they have a different, like water. When water's frozen, it has a different characteristic to any other atom. In that water, all other atoms, they contract when they're frozen. When they go into absolute zero, they occupy a smaller space. Water is the only thing that expands and occupies a bigger space. And gold, on the other end of the spectrum, when it's heated, it has a completely different characteristic to all other matter, in that it changes its atomic density. It actually operates at has a different weight. And this is why it was very, very difficult for those that were trying to paint a monoatomic gold, because you have to specify an atomic density. You can't have a changing atomic density. It became very difficult. No one's ever been able to paint monoatomic gold because it seems to change its density, atomic density, when it's heated. To the point comes where it has such a high rate of spin when it's heated that it actually disappears out of view. So if you were to video a car going round and around and around in a car park, yeah, and then we play that video, you could watch the car going round and around and around. But if I speeded it up 100 times, the car would disappear to your view.
Yes, absolutely.
Are you familiar, Dave, with the etchings inside the pyramids that have pictures? I'm assuming they're the Anunnaki, and there are also pictures etched in the walls of the pyramid of the red and blue Kachina.
Absolutely. So we can see this, and we've always assumed that was our Earth and the Sun, but now we start to realize that this is whoever built it. This was the Anunnaki, and they're very big beings. And you can understand that the blue Kachina is a much, much, much bigger planet than Earth, and humanity would struggle on that planet. It would have to be much bigger, so we could almost conceive that there might be giants, what we would perceive as giants living on that planet, that would need to be much more sturdy to cope with the much bigger gravity thereof. And that they might very much use. Have you noticed that humanity loves gold? It's a natural thing for humanity, and it always has been. All forms of humanity throughout the ages have had this obsession with gold. So whatever created us obviously wanted us to harvest gold, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's an exchange going on. We harvest gold for them because they desperately need gold to be able to be able to keep the heat. I suspect that they use gold. That's where I was going with the whole gold thing, this relationship. I suspect that we harvest gold for them. That's always been the relationship, that we kind of gather gold and they use gold to create their atmosphere so they can not only be kind of sort of invisible, but they can have a type of heat retention system, because you can imagine they go away further and further away from the sun, and they need to keep a constant temperature. If there is life on that planet, they need to keep a constant temperature. So you need a way of reflecting all the solar heat that you can keep in that whole system back into the system. And I've got a funny feeling that this is another part of what we call what Jeff P would call the sun simulator. Could be part of the system that actually that Planet X uses to retain the heat that it's getting from to retain its own solar heat, so it doesn't freeze. There's so much stuff that we don't know. I've got a funny feeling that as we when we go right through this system, all that happens in Planet X, in my idea, is that we go back to factory settings, the whole system that humanity is and everything else. If we choose to keep our present God, as in whatever the Planet X system is, and not go with this warring factor, that when we go through this, we just go back to our original factory settings, which means that we kind of naturally revert back to our original God, and everything goes back, and we kind of we wake up. We are awake. I asked originally, I said, when did we wake up? When did we open our eyes? And the answer I got was, well, it's very difficult. And I said, why is it so difficult for us to open our eyes? And they said, well, try now. And I had my eyes open. I said, but my eyes are open. It said, very difficult. It said, how do you open your eyes when your eyes are already open?
And so many of us don't want to open our eyes, and I do believe that the havoc that the New World Order is projecting out onto our planet is to keep our eyes closed. So we're coming up like on our last 15, 20 minutes. Why don't you go over what you have seen and projected for us to go through for the next couple months?
Okay, so well, I'm of a mind. This is the final phase of this now, and then we're past it, and we've had this come. I understand that we've had this come many, many times. So try not. There's always going to be those who are going to turn it immediately around and say that we're fear-mongering, that this is the end of the world. There's nothing that this thing's going to do that humanity, the woes that humanity is doing to each other at the moment, right now, especially in the name of Christianity and faith and religion and that sort of stuff. We've never seen the atrocity, anything close to what Planet X can do in terms of in the name of Christianity at the moment. Whatever the sort of like the certain Christians and the likes have done in the name of Christianity, in the name of this religion that has been largely ripped off out of plagiarized out of Samaria and then used to attack the very source where it came from. The Planet X will not touch the level of insanity that has been done in the name of Christianity. I think we all realize that. There's nothing more insane than Christianity on this planet at the moment. That doesn't mean that Christians are bad. It means that we have a choice. We can either take the teachings and raise our vibration, or we can take the teachings and use them in the name of belief to inflict terrible harm. And that is one of the things that's happening on all the sides, in all the main religions around the world are being used. Well, Buddhism, but Buddhism is not really a religion. It's more of a code of conduct. It's a way of meditation and what have you. But in terms of my timeline right now, to not go into panic, we're going to come close to the tail, like we said. This thing is cutting. It's already gone past us, but we're approaching that point. And late October, I'm suspecting we're going to go over the top of the tail. So we're going to be in quite close proximity to a lot of. We already are, I suspect, going to be in quite close proximity to a lot of asteroids, a lot of debris, if you like. And then obviously on the 4th of December, we're actually going to go over the actual Planet X system, which is what Nibiru orbits. But obviously, we're going to get massive earthquakes at that point. And depending on how aggressive and warring we are, will, like I say, determine how much this will affect us. And all I can tell you is that you are not the nonsense going through your head. None of us are. We need to go into our heart, go into our breathing exercises. And then we come to the big last phase of that, and that is when the Planet X is going to crosses the kind of line that Earth orbits around the Sun. It's kind of done that now, in my opinion, and it's heading towards the Sun, and is obviously going round Planet X that we're going to cross on the 4th of December. and it's going to head back towards us as we cut it round. We're going to cut across at the path, as they say. We're going to sort of like, it's going to come back around, and it's going to do a full half circle, and we're going to be coming right back, and we're going to be in very close proximity to it. And I'm imagining if we're going to get an eclipse, it's going to be in the lead up to around about the, on my map, it looks like the 2nd of January is the point of crossing, which means that right at the end of December, early January, but more likely in the very last days of December, we could get a solar eclipse, except it could be really quite a long solar eclipse, and it's going to be very scary. And in that moment, I'm told that is when kind of duality is concluding on this earth. And the first message I got was, put simply, your earth will no longer support duality. It's time for ego to have a life of its own. And what it means by that is that the true point of singularity, of occurrence, won't happen until literally the sun rises after that 3 days of darkness. And that point, when that rises, those souls which are transcending this level, because remember, just because we've got 3 levels of Shiva holds the trident, doesn't it? It's always 3. There's 3 levels of evolution occurring here. There's the human level of evolution. And so there's the human beings that are experiencing this whole process. Then you've got the souls that are incarnating. Now, if a human being just chooses to go with its ego soul, it's not because its higher soul has decided, has gone rogue. It's because the higher self has chosen to step back and allow the human to have this choice, which means that it will become its ego self. And this is what the Colburn Bible talks about. It said that we can let go of our higher selves, our guides, our highest aspirations if we choose to. It says that humanity is not chastised for the mistakes it makes, but it's chastised for the mistakes it fails to rectify. And so we are coming to this point now that we've made a lot of mistakes, but now it's time to see those mistakes, see where this is going, and correct the mistakes within ourselves, to take that finger of blame, to take hold of it, to bend it back on ourselves, and correct these mistakes within our own beings right now, to come out of blame, to come out of hate, to come out of even hope can be, when you're doing all the things you hope to be, you don't have to hope anymore. That doesn't mean you can't pray and you can't invite great help and great assistance in from high vibrations. But to me, hope is just gutless prayer without connecting to any higher to any higher space. It's a very lazy type of action. It's not even action. It's effortless. That's why all politicians always come out with hope. That's why religions come out with hope. It's kind of gutless prayer. I mean, it's always good to have a positive outlook. But if you're not willing to put any of your real life into it, any intention into it, what about going out buying seed? What about going out storing some food? What about trying to sort of like lobby against this sort of like these nuclear power stations and saying, shut the power stations down, shut the power stations down. Do all the things that you're hoping, embody them into your body as we approach these things. Change the record. Be the change you want to see, as Rex Bear often says on his show. Be the change you want to see. We need to embody that a lot more right now. We need to become really proactive in everything that we're talking about. Not hope that we might be the humans we want to be. Just do it. Do it. Get on and do it. You don't have to hope for it anymore. Do it. You're here. You are incarnated in this plane, in this realm, at this time. And if you are in a body, look at Stephen Hawking. He can only move his little finger. That's all he can do. And look at the massive transformation that he's brought to this world with just a little finger. Just his little finger. So whenever you have full body and you have money and wealth and power and everything else like that, And if you can't help anyone and you really can't see yourself doing anything, then give people like myself or whoever else out there some money and assistance so they can do things, the things that you think you'd hope to do, but you're not going to do because you think the hope is going to be sufficient. And if you're just a hoper, then all I can tell you is if you've got money in the bank, that money ain't going to be worth so much. Pass it on to people who can do things, aren't just going to sit by and hope that they might do something. Do something. Help people. Do everything you can. Engage in every way you can. That's what I'd say, through this process. This is your awakening. You're already awake. Your eyes are already open. But you need to start doing the stuff. You have very little time left to sort of make the changes that you want to see, but you'll have to do them. You can't hope for them. That's just a cop-out. It's just an empty, pointless, ugly cop-out. Just to sit back and just retract from any type of action and hope that you might do something.
And these massive earthquakes that we are about to experience, and as guest 12 said, we are about to go through the meteor storm, and the earth will be, many cities will be caught on fire. When we go through these events, they are going to be horrific, but it's the way we deal with the event and help others is what's going to decide the outcome of our planet. Don't you agree, Dave?
Absolutely. The higher the vibration that humanity occupies through this process, the much easier the transition. But there is a much bigger process going on in this that we are also not seeing, and it's a much more complicated process. And that's why, I've plugged laughing gas a little bit there, but I would also say, whilst I've plugged laughing gas, that in many of my videos, especially the last big one I did, the 13th flyby, you can see you can get a free download of my Dropbox. So you can just download laughing gas and as a free. And I've got to tell you, I am so broke at the moment. I've got no money. The reason I don't make so many videos, I just can't afford it. I'm literally so. If anyone does download it and enjoys it, please make a donation, please, because I am so brassed now. I am so broke, and it puts so much pressure on my relationship.
Tell everybody how they can help you out. Do you have an email? Give your email out, or is there a PayPal that they can click on? How do we help you out?
Well, you can sort of I don't expect anything from anyone. It's a terrible thing to sort of say, but I need money like everyone else, and I've devoted so much of my time to doing this, and of course I don't earn any money out of it. So I kind of most of the time just choose to live in a little caravan. But my email is subgeniustv@gmail.com, which is how you access my YouTube channel, which is Dave Dobbs. On YouTube, my YouTube channel, which is all about Nibiru, obviously, and Planet X. You can buy the book. There's various kind of books you can buy of laughing gas that cost different amounts on Lulu.com. If you buy it on, you can buy it on Amazon as a hardback on Amazon. You can get it really cheap on Amazon if you just want a cheap hard copy. Or you can go onto Lulu, and there's different ones you can buy on Lulu of the same book, but it costs more money. Or if you just want to donate me some money to help me if you like what I'm doing and you think, God, this guy needs some help, and he'd probably produce a load more videos if he had a little bit of money, and you think, actually, I just want to help this guy out, then you can donate directly to me via the channel. There's a donate button, or you can get in contact with me and say, look, if there's any way I can help you. Like Tom. Just one guy just gave me $1,000. It enabled me to come out to America and come to the conference and meet all you guys and open up that circle, which has enabled this conversation. So that goes out to Tom. It's one person. It's only one person who's actually. I've only ever sold really even though people read the book, no one ever pays. No one ever offers me any money or anything else like that. And I'm not giving them a hard time there because obviously I didn't do this for money. I always offered this up and said to Mike that which works with me. I said I'm not going to charge for this. I'm just going to do this all. And if money comes, then money comes. But I'm not going to put a financial reward for myself between the message that I'm giving out here and what's going out. It should be accessible to everyone, regardless of whether. Because if someone hasn't got money or they just think whatever, why shouldn't they just get the information? And you know, and if they want to give, then it's a much nicer way if they choose to give as a result afterwards or whatever. But I don't expect that from anyone. No, everyone should be available. That should be available to everyone, you know, and so it is. It's all there. It's all available to everyone, you know. And if you choose to help me, then that's great. Or you choose to help whoever. Help Steve. Steve does an amazing job. Jeff B does an amazing job. You know, you do an amazing job. You know, help you as well. I'd say, you know. Do you know what I mean? Just like, it's help who you think you want to help, and I promise you, everything you're going to give out is going to come back to you 1,000-fold, and it always does, you know. And we've just got to help each other and realize that, you know, none of us are earning any money out of this. We're all just doing this for the love of it. But we need assistance. We all need assistance, and I'm so broke at the moment. I tell you, I'm so blasted at the moment. But then I've done my message, you know. I've managed to get it out there, and I haven't been as effective as I wanted to be, but I've managed to get it out there, you know, and I've done what I've had to do, and so I have done it. So maybe you know, the other side of it is, at least it is out there. At least you can get that information. I'd love to have some money so I could actually put some of the things in action that I'd like to do. As no doubt you're the same, Robert. You know, in your process, we're all just trying to keep the wolf from the door, aren't we? One way or the other.
Yeah. Oh, you said it, brother. I mean, and pretty much all of us involved in, you know, exposing the reality of what's taking place. We're all poor as church mice. You know, that is the absolute truth.
But you know what? We're happy and we're full of love, and that's what counts.
That's right.
That's
exactly
what
right.
counts. You know, and on that note, we're into the last 60 seconds of the show. It went by so fast, Dave. What a wonderful conversation. I love you so much, brother. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing with us tonight. God bless you, and may good blessings shower down upon you, and may you manifest everything that you want in your heart, and just have love and peace surround you.
Oh, Badbaby, thank you so much for having me on the show, and thank you. It was so lovely meeting you in America, and that another big thanks to Tom out there who put the $1,000 into my account and enabled me to do that, and to Steve and to all the wonderful people, and Jeff P, the people we've talked about, and all the wonderful people that have contributed to this, and to you, Robert, for your lovely questions, and you're really, really, obviously you've done an enormous amount of research yourself, and all of this, you know, no one's getting paid for this. They're all doing it for the love of it because they believe that we can get through this. They're not all the fear mongers that drive this. You know, We're not that. You know, we are better than that. We're trying to bring beauty and love to this world. And
agreed, Dave. And I wanted to thank you as well. It was a pleasure speaking with you. It was actually an honor speaking with you. And you keep up the great work.
Dave, you know, we'll be in touch, Dave, and maybe we can book you to come back sometime in November, and we'll have another great chat.
That'd be brilliant. I look forward to that.
Well, on that note, you guys, I love you both. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.